Want to beat your mates at fantasy football? I've got a little secret for you.
Fantasy Football Hub provides the artificial intelligence, recommended transfers, expert team reveals, and more, all designed to help you win your mini-league.
Big beats.
If you don't win your mini-league, we'll even refund your membership. Sign up today for 50% off. Terms apply. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 3-for-1 Sky Fantasy Podcast from Fantasy Football Hub. Paul, how was your Sky weekend going so far?
Yeah, on Saturday I felt very underwhelmed about how I was doing, and then had a bit of reflection yesterday, and I was pretty comfortable knowing I've used only one transfer. My team isn't particularly great, but there's no fires to put out necessarily. So yeah, I'm just going to have a revisit the plan. I'm okay, I think.
There's some familiar faces at the top of the total player points that maybe a lot of people have, including us, have potentially overlooked. Solly March, legend last season, 29 points in 2 games. That is absolutely insane. Brighton and Brentford, I know he had that penalty for a lot of owners, including yourself, didn't he? On that odd captaincy day. I can't remember if it was last season or the season before. And Rodri as well, 25 points. Those three have smashed it. Visser as well, 7.6 midfield, 24. Estepinen, who we both bemoaned at the end of last season because we didn't own him, continue with his amazing form. 20 points, even though he actually conceded in both games as well, which has been crazy. But yeah,
he's the one that got away from me, I think. Like, I talked to you the day when the game launched, and I made a last minute change, take him out for Richarlison. So 16 points down from that move.
Got him in one team and not on the other, so I'm quite happy. But he just looks so dangerous. It's going to be interesting because their fixtures swing quite harshly after next weekend. But I just can't see. I've doubled up on Brighton defence, and their fixtures are quite harsh. But it's a hard shift on, I think.
Yeah, I'm a bit petrified of Brighton just now because I have no plans to get any Brighton players in, and they look so good until about, I think it was like Gameweek 11. I'm not doing intricate planning to that point, but
yeah,
there's a Sunday around about then where their fixtures turn decent again. So I think I'll be holding off until then. I would argue that they are fixture proof just now, but yeah, it feels like I've got other fires to potentially put out before then.
I think a good game to maybe test their progression. So after this weekend, they're home to Newcastle in game week 4, which will be just before the international break. I think that will be a good game, a really good test at home as well for them to see actually, are they the real deal? Or not. And obviously after that they've got Europe, haven't they? So it is going to be an interesting time around that period to see how they cope with Europe, how that affects them. Defensively, they had conceded in both games as well, which is potentially a concern. But yeah, I think after next week it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We've had so many comments and questions, Paul. Firstly, I suppose, on lots of people started well. Lots of people haven't started so well. What words have you got for those who maybe haven't started as well as they'd have hoped?
Game week 2 last year, you and I came onto the pod. I think I've started worse this year than I did last year, but I think it was like 15k or something like that. Which I came off air and thinking there was a few recognisable faces that were above me by 20, 30, maybe even 40 points in some mini leagues. And I had said something to you off air afterwards, saying I was a bit disappointed, and you're like plenty of time still, like one captaincy to catch it up. And thinking back to those words and then looking at where I am, like you started with Estepinen and I over Richarlison, right? And I'm 12 points behind you. That's like one captaincy. That's not even like a big captaincy swing. That's a single goal captaincy.
Well, you had Salah. I think you captained Salah and I captained Haaland on Saturday.
Right.
So you gained 6 points back immediately there. So it's nothing.
But there's 12 difference. Yeah, 12 difference. But yeah, so like my team isn't in any great shape, but I'm adamant that as long as you've got no fires with injured players, you pick the players that you started with for a reason. Now, if there's some that you feel that was genuinely a mistake, then have a look at the long-term plan to correct that. Are you moving to players that are allowing you the budget or the flexibility in formation to make the subsequent move? So if you've got someone like Martinez still, I tweeted this on Saturday, and it wasn't that I think Martinez is a good pick and that I would stick with him on that basis. I don't think he's ever been particularly great for consistency bonus anyway, but I mean, I'd be holding for the Nottingham Forest game because part of holding them was for the Forest and Wolves home games, and then move on Sunday, but move on with a view of what your long-term strategy is, and as I say, the budget points and the flexibility that allows you afterwards. Right at the start of the season, there's plenty of opportunities, and just look at yesterday. Like, I know a lot of people making 2 or 3 or 4 moves into Chelsea and Villa, and there wasn't a single decent captaincy amongst them all. That's not I'm not saying that Chelsea won't come good on Friday or not either, but there's going to be plenty of days like that where you could pick a captain and they could get a haul, and others aren't, like a lonely owned captain, and you're not like really going against the masses by picking against a Saka or a Haaland or a Salah as well.
Yeah, I agree. And before we get into the meat of the podcast, firstly, let's just say hello to everyone in the chat. Windy is in first, as always. He says, good evening, chat. Play the long game, they said. According to my rank, I must be playing the wrong game. Windy, I haven't had the best of starts, but he did have a fantastic season last year, so I'm pretty sure he'll be back up there soon. Graham Craig is in, so unspectacular start, fairly template. Lee Williams, Pananda, a fellow Welshman. Jason Mann is in. Paul Kendo. Geoboy says, no transfers made, I'm weakening. Julian is in, says, an underwhelming weekend. RR14 says, can I get a hoo-yah? Hoo-yah to you, RR. Joseph is in. Tomya. Joe Matthews says, Martinez is on the shit list. Manchester. Glenn Murray. Kieran Sutton. Martin Beatty. Dave Hannigan. Josh Stevens. Can we talk about about Enzo's penalty miss being the difference between something like 28 points and 4 captains? Yeah, that was pretty harsh. I can't remember if it was on this pod actually, but I think it did say that Enzo's got a very good chance of being on penalties. He's on set pieces, playing further up the pitch. I think Casado will push him up more. Still think he's a really, really good pick. So if you've got him in, I think you're good there. And Andy Barnett is in as well. So we've got the average remaining transfers. This was as of last Friday. This will have gone significantly down again, I bet. But top 10, 45.1. So they've basically maxed out on their transfers. Top 100, 45.5. Top 1,000, 46.8. Top 5,000, 47.7. You can guess, though, that all of those will have dipped significantly again this weekend. But you also put a tweet out, didn't you, Paul? Was this on Friday? I want to say Friday, was it?
Just Saturday morning, yeah. I was just keen. I know that a lot of people that follow me are engaged players, and whilst you look at the crazy average remaining stats overall, I wanted to get a better sense of what people were doing as a kind of talking point here. I'm not sitting on my high perch about people, the teams that they've picked, and how many transfers they're using and what's right or not. All I would say is that if I was planning on using like a few transfers at this stage of the season, what I would be looking for is the proven Premiership consistent points scorers with the moves that I was making. So I wouldn't argue against making moves on fixture games to pick up Rodri and to pick up Enzo and to pick up others. It would be where we're picking a lot of unproven ones. I don't know what your opinion on Chilwell is. I just feel that, like, look, you could go and get a clean sheet, and I know he's playing further up the field, and he could get some attacking returns on Friday. I've got this feeling it's a trap, and I just don't think he's not got that consistent backdrop of, if Chelsea concede, that he picks up the 5 points automatically from passes and stuff like that. Maybe it's from my own experiences of owning the Chelsea fullbacks in this format, before. I don't think I've had a successful run since Alonso under Conte, in terms of Chelsea fullbacks. But yeah, I don't know that I'd be using transfers like that just now, especially if I wasn't captain and I'm. Whereas I think someone like Enzo or Rodri or Diaz, if I was using a lot of transfers only after 2 games where I know that I've got information on those players already, whereas I still think a lot of Chelsea's up in the air just now. Colwell might require a transfer out at some point in time, especially if he's not going to be hitting bonuses. There's a few single captaincy days coming up, and it's just after the international break that I know that I'll be wanting to use transfers, bringing in a player and then daisy chain off again. So I'm already banking 2 or 3 transfers down the line there as well, whilst not having a set in stone plan. That's kind of the rationale for putting me off just now. Like, I think there was a few questions about Arsenal players and jumping off Arsenal players. I think if you're planning on getting rid of Saka or Saliba just now, then your team's in a much better shape than mine is, because
you've got 8 other players you want to get rid of first.
Those are like, I think the other question about just felt like a good time for it to come up just now is, if I was to do an overhaul and start again from right now, how many my current team would be in it? And I think 5's answer, and Saliba and Saka would be two of the 5. So bear
in mind, Arsenal at this moment have only played 1 game, and they both returned in those games. I think it's easy to look at Arsenal because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind at the moment. But once they play this evening, and they're home again, aren't they? They got a really nice fixture on the weekend, home to Fulham on Saturday. You know, if they do well in these 2 games, everyone will be talking about getting more Arsenal, right? Because well,
especially Declan Rice is on my watch list for tonight in terms of just having a seat, like having a look, see how he plays. Is he picking up other tiers of bonus on top of what was perhaps expected from the passing perspective? And if he does pick up regularity of bonus at 8.1, I think he would be one of the people higher up on my watch list for trying to transfer in.
Just on Chilwell, I do think I'm very tempted by him. At the moment, I don't think I've got a player, maybe Rashford, but I don't think I've got a player I'm desperate to get rid of, and that's always the thing for me. But I do think with Chilwell, now the fact we've got 50 transfers, like Chelsea's next 2 are home to Luton, home to Forest. One's obviously this Friday, the following is next Saturday. There's like a 2-for-1 over a lot of teams, and it's an easy shift off if you wanted to. I do think he could be that kind of really explosive player who could bang 12, 15, 17, 18 points in 1 game. Or, as you rightly say, he could do absolutely nothing. He was brought off in the 61st minute yesterday when they were losing. He can get injured at the drop of a hat as well, but I do think the fixtures do line up as such that he is worth a gamble. And the fact that it's a 50 transfer game instead of 40, I think you can afford to take a few punts on these kind of players now. And if they swim and don't sink, absolutely fantastic. You can gain 20, 30 points on your opponents very, very quickly, very easily. He's also got multiple routes to points as well, because against these teams, Luton and Forest, I don't know. Well, I say that in his new role, basically as like a second striker. I'm not sure if he will get the pass in, but he's very likely he'll likely get one of passing or shots or an assist or something, as well as the potential for clean sheets, as well as the high upsides, in terms of attacking returns as well. So I do think he could potentially be a trap, but I think for the sake of 1 transfer, the potential explosiveness for him, especially over these next 2, and the run goes on, right? I think I think that's it as well. So after home to Luton, home to Forest, then away to Bournemouth, home to Villa, then they're away to Fulham, away to Burnley. That's a lot of pretty sensational fixtures. If he plays all those games, it's probably fair to say you can expect a lot of returns out of him. If he doesn't, there are easy outs. So I'm probably a bit more tempted than you are by the sound of it.
There is another Chelsea hop on point, game week 6 in Sky, which is the fifth set of fixtures where they play on a Sunday.
Yeah,
and
that's the Bournemouth game. Yeah,
you can make a move on there, and I think even the goalkeeper might be appealing at that point in time, if not done so already, to try and free up some money. Again, by that point, you've got 4 games worth of data and information to go on, particularly as you point out, on the players that you'd want to get rid of, more like as well as the players that you want to get in.
I think that's for me that for me is really important as well. There's always, to me, 2 elements to a transfer. Normally, the easy part is who you want, but taking out a player, like Saka, for example, where there's no rationale for getting rid of him, really, other than you want the other player so badly you're willing to do anything into your team. That generally doesn't lead to very good long-term outcomes for your team. If that's your style of play,
they could play Martial,
burn through quite quickly.
Against Forest, could play Martial up front and then Rashford off the left, whereas Rashford's much more appealing as an attacking asset when he's playing off the left, I think. So,
yeah, it's going to be. It'd be interesting on Saturday to see how United do, because if United go and they suddenly turn all their chances, because they have been having a lot of chances, like Bruno Fernandes has been getting a lot of stick, but I watched that game as a keen fantasy owner, not in Sky but in all the other formats. Like, he missed that point blank header. He put the cross in for Casemiro, whose header was saved incredibly. He should have had a penalty as well, in my opinion. That was definitely a handball for me. So I think the points are there for him a lot more than they are maybe for Rashford. But if United converts their attacking intent into goals on the weekend, and they do Forest 3 or 4-0, Rashford 2 goals, Bruno goal and assist, it suddenly becomes a very different looking game. Do you really want to get rid of Rashford then? So this is why.
Yeah, and that's not players have went on a series of blanks and then one game's changed it, because that'll be a third of the games that they played this season.
Exactly, and and also a lot of us went in on these players because of these first 3 games and the fact that third game was also on a Saturday. So these first 3 games are what you hung your hat. It hasn't quite happened in the first 2. If it does in the third, their average point is certainly not that bad. So, we've had a lot of questions around some underwhelming assets thus far and what to kind of do with them. I've got a graphic up now which is showing Nicholas Jackson, who was underwhelmed on the points front. He hasn't underwhelmed on the XGI or XG front. I think he's been unlucky.
Entertainment.
Ollie Watkins, 2 assists I think he's had, which is maybe a bit underwhelming for those who wanted to captain against Everton yesterday. Obviously Rashford front and centre, we've mentioned Colwill, but I personally think you just hold him. This is where his run starts now from Friday, assuming that he, I expected Chelsea to concede against Liverpool and also away to West Ham personally, which is why I'm just happy to just hold him, and Bruno as well. So we've had a lot of questions around what to do with these sorts of players. Underwhelming, but still have the potential to do really well. What are your thoughts on those, either on those specific players or similar kind of players that people are thinking of getting rid of?
Well, Watkins is difficult because he plays on Sunday this coming week as well, so you're not getting a fixture prior to taking him out unless you were to move on to an Arsenal player, like maybe I'm thinking of someone that's cheaper rather than going up, so someone like Rice, I guess, or if he didn't start with Saliba, maybe. Again, I'm keen to wait until at least Saturday before making any moves, and that's even before seeing a Chelsea team sheet on Friday, etc. And then if I was taking them out, I'd be more tempted by taking Rashford or Bruno out based on them holding a lot of money, than picking up a player that's perhaps more consistent for points, like plays on Saturday, like City play on Saturday this week, and you see the City type lineup, so like Rodri or Diaz again is another one that could be moved on to. Have a think about what formation you need in future moves as well. So if you are planning on more moves either before or after the international break, then maybe bring another defender in if you're on 3 at the back, so that if you've owned Colwill and you find that he loses his place for Chelsea and you want to move him on, then you don't need to do a defensive move for it. It opens up to be able to bring in a player from any other position. So a few things to think about. I think out of those, the only one, if Colwill loses his spot on Friday doesn't play against Luton, which I'm not predicting he will, but if he did, then that might be an opportune time to move on, or perhaps Colwell plus Rashford after the Saturday to do it. But just think long term with the moves. Players that you don't want to be bringing in that you're going to then chain off. It just doesn't feel right to me at this point of the season. I think I'd be bringing in players that I don't intend to transfer out, barring injury, like a Rodri or Diaz.
Yeah, same. Just going to ask them, what about, like 3-for-1s? Because there are quite a few 3-for-1s that are coming up as well soon. Is that something I personally don't think about those at this time of the season, unless I'm, unless you get an injury or something along those lines. But Salah, for example, after the game against Wolves on, not Wolves. Apologies, got the wrong thing up. After the game against Newcastle, they've got some toughish games. They've got Villa, then away to Wolves, West Ham, Spurs, and Brighton. They got a toughish run, but then they go on a nice run from Everton to Forest. I think one thing for me last season, which did really well for me, was I just retained those kinds of players because I know I'm going to want him back 100% for that, Everton onwards game, for example. And you could move him out, but he's also capable of scoring in these other games regardless.
And budget's not as big a problem, it doesn't feel, this year.
No.
Like, even, I know people talk about taking Nakamba out, and that's viable if there's a lot of consistency in the 8 million midfielders. You don't need Kane, Salah and Haaland this year, so you're already freeing up that extra slot.
Getting rid of Kane and having Richarlison, like a 3.8 million saving it's just completely changed the game, haven't it, I think. And the fact that like Jackson is 8 million and all this kind of stuff is changing.
Sanchez is 6.6 million goals for the long term if he keeps the number one spot, which I guess by the caliber of goalie that Chelsea sign for either the second or to compete against them, that should make things a bit clearer in that position as well. As I say, there's a good hop-on point for Sanchez post-international break if anyone does decide to go there or wants to free up the money then as well. So, yeah, as I say, going back to the start, I've had an underwhelming start, but then looking on the face of it, I'm a good captain away from being where I would like to be at this stage, and just making sure that whatever moves I'm making are for long-term gain, and then maybe post-international break when I've got more of the data, maybe making a couple of moves for the more foreign players or changes in fixture difficulty at that stage, and then set me up for the kind of next 4 or 5 weeks.
We're looking at the players on the shopping list. Got a graphic up now, and there's these 5 players, but plus some other ones, and a lot of these actually are sort of bonus magnets and budget players. But Enzo Fernandez looks to be playing a lot more forward. He was on penalties yesterday. Whether he continues to be is obviously needs to be seen on, I think, most or all set pieces as well, which is a bit of a change from last year, playing further up the pitch. Bissouma, who just, as a Spurs fan, what a delight to watch. What a difference a year can make in terms of a player. But he absolutely ran the show against Man United. What a footballer. It's absolute delight to have him in the team. I'd probably just add in there Udogie. Again, as a Spurs fan, I watched him really, really closely, and I think he's going to retain his place. He just looks an absolutely fantastic young player. He's been brought off twice in the games I think he's played, but I suggest that's more from experience and
fatigue.
Fatigue, and and Perisic on the bench. I mean, what a backup to have, right? But I do think Udogie looks really good. I'm not sure how much he is. I'm guessing he's probably remarkably cheap in the game. Rodri, Mr. Consistent, 9.4 million. And I think a lot of people have his eyes on him, especially they start on Sunday now this week. He's just, and the fact I think Calvin Phillips is off. I think last year I was a little bit hesitant to go in on Rodri early because they just signed Phillips for a big fee, hadn't they? And I thought he's bound to get some minutes, but the fact that they're playing with Rodri and Kovacic now, I can't, like, even last year, especially more this year, he's just going to start every game. He's so important to that team, and he Estupinian at 8.1, remarkably cheap, looks looks incredible, and Mbeumo as well, who I think he's returned now in. He's averaged over. I saw a stat earlier. This is FPL. It's probably more prevalent in the Sky. I think he's averaged over 10 FPL points per game since Tony's been banned, which is absolutely insane. So they're 5 players. There's obviously a lot more. There's even players like Foden, potentially Alvarez. With this City run as well. All the Chelsea players, Spurs players, Richarlison, as well. So, what's your thoughts on the shopping list, Paul? It's exciting, isn't it?
It's exciting, but again, like we're thinking about using all these transfers now, but I know that post international break, like say Sanchez isn't up there, and I think he'll be high on people's lists. Then you've got Brentford play Forest, so you want probably Mbeumo there. You've got another Forest single game day against Burnley. That is a potential skip, but a 1 year 7.5 million based on the price that he's available at. I can imagine people not minding holding him for a few games, and then you just start banking in more and more transfers on top of these ones as well. So if I was doing anything, and this is why, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get in another Brighton player, but in Mbeumo, there's a good hop-on point, either like if you've got the money in the bank, up from Nakamba potentially in game week 4, but because he plays on the Saturday and Nakamba plays on the Friday, or if you'd went into Bowen, then there's not a good hop-on point for Bowen now unless you've got a Chelsea asset that holds that cash that you can move the Chelsea player to Bowen, then Bowen to Mbeumo or Estepinen on the game week 4, but then that's the week before international break as well. So you add an extra element of risk in all of this as well by doing so there. Again, this is why I won't be going into Estepinen now, and I think I'll be waiting until kind of October time probably to reassess Brighton and look at them on the Sunday. But Mbeumo plays on calendar day 2 on the first game after international break. So if I wasn't to go in before, I think that I'd definitely be picking him up there if he's provided he's still fit.
What are your thoughts on the Man City players? I think now that their squad is quite depleted through obviously selling Gundogan and Mara. The fact that De Bruyne, very unexpected, quite significant injury. I think Bernardo would potentially have played on the weekend, but obviously didn't, which only really leaves, Foden, Alvarez, and Grealish as the 3 kind of supporting attacking players. I thought Foden was excellent on the weekend. Alvarez is always there or thereabouts.
Cheap as well, isn't he?
Yeah, and Kovacic as well seems to be getting a fair few minutes as well. Are they as dangerous as last year? Obviously, there's a lot of people. Dan Cox especially got burnt last year by the defenders.
Yeah. But even if you look at Rico Lewis kicked a clean sheet on the opening day of the season, that was a comfortable game against Burnley. If Man City get a tough Champions League group, you could see Rico Lewis, he's got confidence in him. You could see him playing in a lot of starts. Pep likes Nathan Ake as well, and he's not. And he was left out of the weekend there. Even without Stones, there's 6 players into the 4 defensive positions. I think Diaz is the most assured, and when he does, the difference between Diaz and others, he is more expensive, so you pay for the premium for this. But he plays central, so against whoever, regardless, he'll pick up the passing bonus. As shown at the weekend there, where the others around them struggled.
What about any of the forward players? I know they're not normally your kind of team, are they? But with your Martinelli head on. Go on.
Yeah, I went Mahrez at the end of last season as well, though it didn't work out. Well, it worked out for me. I got over the line in the end, but not for me. I thought Foden was fantastic at the weekend, but I almost think that him playing in central might be worse for him from an attacking point of view. Yes, good for consistency points. Yes, for creating chances, De Bruyne-esque, but De Bruyne in that role hasn't been a good Sky fantasy asset, in my opinion, for a couple of seasons now. It wasn't since he was playing that kind of false 9 position, and he got the 4 goals against Wolves. It was 3 seasons ago that he was kind of top of people's priority list for bringing in. Maybe that was 2 seasons ago. Can't remember.
Let's have a look at the short-term fixtures, courtesy of FF stuff. So now we've got the fixtures up until the first international break, which is only a fortnight away, which is not long at all. Obviously, a big hop-on point onto Man City on Sunday. Their fixtures go Sheffield United away, Fulham at home, and then after the break, then first game back on the Saturday, they're away to West Ham. Then they're home to Forest, away to Wolves. Before they go into a toughest run, then away to Arsenal, home to Brighton, away to Man United. But those 5 games there, they've got five games there in a lot of time where a lot of the teams have got 4, 1 or 2 even play 3 in that period. So that's a bit of a takeaway there. Man City's fixtures go quite well. They've got 2 difficult fixtures after Forest on the weekend. They go Arsenal away on the following Sunday, then home to Brighton on the first one back, and then they play the following Saturday, the 23rd. They go away to Burnley, home to Palace. They go on a fairly decent run then, and Arsenal's they've got kind of up and down fixtures after these next 2. They're home to United, away to Everton, home to Spurs, away to Bournemouth, home to Man City. So they've got 3 home games, but all against really tough sorts of opposition. So these are these fixture swings we're talking about. Brighton away to West Ham, home to Newcastle, away to Man United, then they're home to Bournemouth, then they're away to Villa, home to Liverpool, away to Man City. So you mentioned about going back later on, I'm guessing Sunday the 29th of October.
Yeah, I knew it was October at some point.
Yeah.
And I say it's loose plans because you don't need to bank in because there's going to be so many assets. You'll see what kind of team they're putting out in Europe at that point as well. I think it's a good point to reassess. That's not to say I wouldn't be getting rid of SGPN or Matoma or any of those if I owned them for sure. But I'm kind of in that. I'm personally in that don't buy, don't sell kind of phase with Brighton just now, which might come to bite me because they could go in even against the tougher teams. They could turn over, make like a few. You wouldn't call it a surprise now, would you?
And Spurs and Chelsea go on really nice runs from now, actually, from their next games. Really nice long runs as well. And Liverpool's decent run starts from Saturday the 21st of October. So what's your initial thoughts, Paul, in the short term? Is it just kind of sit on your hands and because that we know is a recipe for success in the main, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to do. Like I look at my team and think, because say I would keep 5 if I was resetting it just now. But looking at the players that I want to get in, when's the best time to get those players in? Is it short-termism when I'm thinking about the form that they've been on just now? Like if that was to change, would that player still be as good an asset? Whereas Rodri could blank for 2 games in a row, and like for me in my head, the odds don't change on him picking up the consistency of the way that he picks up points the games after that. Anyway, so I've got no. I made one move to get off Morgan Gibbs-White to move on to Chelsea for the fact that Chelsea have great fixtures. I've got no real desire now to add to that, even if they went and kind of put like 3 or 4 past Luton. I think I would still hold, knowing that I've got the opportunity to go back in on the, as I say, it's Sky Gameweek 6, which is the 5th set of fixtures after the international break, if I so choose. And I personally rather have the 4 games or 5 games worth of data from players, other than if I was moving on to players that I'm more comfortable and know what you're getting out of your, say, Rodri's, etc.
And let's not forget that we will always have a shopping list, right? It's not like all of a sudden we've got this shopping list of players, because last week the slide had put up around players we want. There were 5 different players in the 5 I put up this week, and that is very, very easy to forget, I think, especially for newer players. You will always want new players, different players in your team, and the whole discipline and skill of this game is knowing about holding on to the right players long term, going in when you have to on these explosive players when the fixtures turn, when you have a good captaincy, when you have a single day captaincy, kind of daisy chaining them on around. But the whole skill of this game is the discipline of holding on, right? Because if you do make 2 or 3 transfers every single week, you don't need to be amazing at maths to work out that you're going to be short for the final third of the season when a lot of your experienced opponents are going to have probably 15 to 20 odd transfer. Well, maybe 12 to 15 back at that period, and they're just going to fly through and overtake you when you get all these 4-for-1s, 5-for-1s, 6-for-2s. So yeah, that's the kind of short-term snapshot.
It's not it, yeah. And just to reiterate, I'm not saying dictating don't use transfers if you've got injured players or it feels like the right time to move it on, if that's part of the new plan, then fine. I'm just trying to avoid knee-jerk reactions based on disappointing outcomes from one or two games.
And you touched on, things like Brentford hop on point, Brighton hop on point. We've got like a medium term fixture snapshot now, which goes from game week, so this will be 6 to game week 12.
Look at the Newcastle fixtures on the Sunday there as well. Like Nick Pope, like Brentford, Sheffield United away, Burnley at home, West Ham away, Crystal Palace at home, Wolves away in the 6 after that. Like Nick Pope could easily be the best keeper there, and I doubt many people will be on him at that point in time. Like there's an opportunity there if you didn't want to go Sanchez, or say if you wanted to go a little bit different without doing something crazy, because you possibly won't captain him, but you get the consistency of the returns then.
I think Villas as well. They've had a toughish start, I think, from game week 9, Saturday, 7th of October. Villas
It'll be tougher on Wednesday.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, we had a couple of comments about
at the Leeds San Siro.
For those who haven't seen, they've been drawn against the mighty Hibs. We've got the
John McGinn derby.
Yeah, and the Adam Cropcroft against the Paul McAnulty derby there.
Oh yeah, well. I forgot Adam's.
But there's going to be lots of fixture swings in this time, aren't there? Which is going to be interesting. Anything else jump out there, Paul? In terms of, obviously, there's the Forest and Brentford single game day as well, but there is on the first.
The other game I was going to mention is Liverpool. Right, at this moment in time, I have zero desire to pick up Van Dijk or Trent, but it takes a couple of games where they pick up passing bonuses and some attacking returns, and whilst going into Spurs on Sunday the 24th isn't the best fixture in isolation, they go on a good run after that. So, go on an average run after that. I think it's actually picks up. It's Sunday the 29th of October, that same day as the Brighton game, where their real good fixtures start. But again, there's a couple of opportunities where picking up. Trent was the first person who I looked at his price in the game this season, and I imagine others would be similar too, but he doesn't seem to be in any of the many of the screenshots on Twitter or in group chats and such like. But it'll come back round again at some point. I'm sure of that, and another opportunity to use transfers there once you've got more information or once fixtures change.
It will. Just in terms of looking ahead to the single game days in this period, we've got Burnley and Forest on Monday the 18th of September. Any early thoughts on that one? I don't see enough of Burnley.
I really like a 1 year. I picked them up in a few other format articles pre-season, and I was going to start with him on Sky if he didn't have that injury in pre-season. That's not to say, and butterfly effect, that's not to say he would have went on and done what he'd done if I had started with him or that information hadn't come out. But definitely consider him for Monday the 18th of September. I wouldn't be wanting to go into the Sunday game against Mbeumo the fall 2 weeks after that, I don't think. And Brentford do have some tricky fixtures, do have some nice fixtures. I think their home fixtures are good in that period and their away fixtures are bad, but Brentford are quite an attacking team anyway and could nick goals against some of the bigger teams.
If you go in on a 1 year on that night on the Burnley, you've got home to Burnley, away to Man City, home to Brentford, which is a single game day, away to Palace, home to Luton, which is a really nice run of games there. Sort of 3 of the 5 are decent. Would you also bet against a 1 year scoring against Man City away? The kind of the way he kind of bullies in his pace. they've got a 5.
The good thing with Forest is that after they play their singles, they play 2 home games back to back on Saturdays.
Yeah,
it's not 2 home games. Sorry, they play 2 games afterwards on Saturdays back to back, and therefore each offers the hop off point to move on to another player if you're doing a daisy chain from there. It could be like if as say mentioned earlier on, if Colwell's lost his place in that Chelsea team, or it doesn't look like he's going to get consistent passing, if your formation, your flexibility, the transfers you're making just now allows, then you could even make like a defender to striker transfer at that point in time.
They've also got a 5 for 3, which with the captaincy would be an effective 6 for 3, or even if you captain him on both games, a 7 for 3 over certain teams as well. So I know it's Forest, I know it's a 1-year, but you know he could be the kind of player who could just be squirreled away in your team that not many of your opponents have got, and just kind of tick along. If he scores 3 goals in those 6 games, for example, especially as a captain.
He scored 8 goals. He scored 8 goals in his last 6 Premier League games.
Yeah, definitely. He could be one, especially at 7.5. He could be one there. Good stuff, Paul. Really good thinking there, and a good forward plan. I think the message is just play it cool. If your players are playing, if they're starting, it's very easy to look at the shiny toys, as we like to say. But I'm pretty sure that next week and the week after, the watch lists will be very different again, won't they?
Rethink your plan. Constantly rethink your plan. Use tools like Ian Parron's planner and other things to reassess after every game day.
Let's have a quick look at this game week then. So we've got a game this evening. Starts in hour and 45. Palace home to Arsenal. How do you see this game going? Saka's way ahead in the polls for captaincy.
Yeah, I think it'll be tight. Maybe like 2 on Arsenal.
Yeah, I think it'll be tight as well. I agree. Saka way ahead in the polls, and he's sort of like 70-80% like captaincy, so it's pretty easy one to kind of navigate there, I think. Looking ahead to next weekend, Chelsea, Luton, 8 o'clock. Be interesting to see the team sheet. I think it's going to be very hard for people if you don't own, Chilwell, don't own Jackson, and they're both starting line. I think it's going to be hard.
It's an interesting one because I'd say Enzo is a good captaincy option in most Chelsea games, but when they're playing, I'm nothing against Luton at all, but it's one of the 2 suggested easiest fixtures in the Premier League this season, at home to Luton and at home to Sheffield United. That is Enzo the best option? It's like almost like if Haaland wasn't playing for City but Rodri was playing. It's like when you're playing one of the worst teams at home in the league, is Rodri the best asset? When I know he can get a haul, but when you've got like a Foden or an Alvarez or someone that could really rack up kind of the double-digit scores a more consistent basis than Rodri would. So interesting. But you go with what you've got now, right? Like if you've got Jackson, Chilwell, or Enzo, I think you captain all 3 of those over Colwell, even though I suspect Colwell will
do well on passing bonus.
I've got low battery, so I just need to plug in quickly. But realise we're good. So is Jackson one of those players that once he gets his first goal, he'll get a few? I think out of them all, I'm not guaranteeing returns, but I think that if I held all of those players, that I'd probably captain Jackson. I do own Jackson, and I will be captain him, but I think if I owned all of those players, I would as well.
I think it would as well. I think the only thing I would also add on there is if you are thinking of going in on Chelsea, this is the time to do it. It's like there was an argument to not do it yesterday. I think personally, just because we hadn't seen enough of them, West Ham away was going to be a hard game. I know a lot went in yesterday. I went on Jackson yesterday as well. But if you are going to go in on we touched on Chilwell. If you're thinking about going on Chilwell and he's starting on Friday, you do it Friday. There's no point hanging on and waiting and doing it the week after, because this is where it starts.
Would you take like Martinez out for Chilwell? I'm thinking that you would. I wouldn't.
I would, yeah. On Friday. Oh, sorry. Ahead of the Forest game on the Saturday. No, I wouldn't. No.
So you're saying going to a Chelsea player if you've got an injury in your team?
Either an injury or I don't know if there's either
doubt
injury
on
or like any game that wasn't home to Forest, for example. If you're thinking of getting rid of someone, if you've got a spot in your team that you want to get rid of, so I would love to go in on Chilwell this week. I don't think I can currently because I haven't got the player I want to take out, or if I do, I can't afford the upgrade. But if there's an opportunity, I'll do it now.
Well, who's a popular player that you would potentially take out if you held them in your team for Chilwell?
I'd have to think. I think if I can afford, I think if I could afford it, which you couldn't because no one's got this money going around. But I think someone like Nakamba, or if you've got like a really cheap enabler with the funds to move up, I potentially would, because they're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna miss them as much. But Rashford, Bruno, your Arsenal play. If Martinelli gets a knock this evening, for example, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Looking back at those underwhelming players, let's have a quick look if there's anyone in there. What do we have?
I agree with you on injuries.
Maybe Ollie Watkins. I'm not sure what fixtures they've got there. They play on the Sunday, don't they? Maybe Watkins. Who have they got? Who Villa got on the weekend? Away to Burnley, home to Liverpool. Maybe Watkins, I think. That ilk, but I wouldn't be taking out personally Rashford, Martinez, Arsenal players, Spurs players ahead of their spanking fixtures coming up. Personally, what do you think?
If you got an injury doubt or something like that, then absolutely, I wouldn't take out any player that was yet to play that weekend. I could see the argument in Nakamba if you had 2 million in the bank on top of what you've got. But if you've got injury doubt, then maybe. But if not, then I wouldn't.
Interesting captaincy decision on Saturday the 26th. We've got Bournemouth and Spurs, United, Forest, Everton, Wolves, Brentford, Palace, Arsenal, Fulham, Brighton, West Ham. Probably pretty tight, I would say. Probably between the United, maybe like Rashford and Saka potentially. What's your current thinking?
Fulham's got the highest expected goals conceded from the first 2 outings, so I wouldn't be going against Saka personally.
So if you're not going for Saka, would a Rashford to Chilwell potentially interest you, knowing that you'll probably get rid of Rashford anyway, or not?
I don't think so, because I think I'd rather have Rashford plus whoever's points on Sunday that I would transfer onto rather than Chilwell's in isolation. And I know that you're not you're not thinking of the Luton game on its own, because you know that they then go on to play Forest at home and such like. But I just couldn't take out a player that was yet to play for a player that was.
Yeah. Anyone else interested you that day? Any kind of hop on points there, maybe, or no? I don't think there is on the Saturday.
See how Chelsea goes again. If some like one of the players, the popular picks like Enzo's not going to get dropped, but if Colwell didn't start or stuff, then maybe there's the opportunity to move him on, like Colwell to. Did I say Chilwell or Colwell? I meant Colwell if I said Chilwell. But like Colwell to Basuma or something like that, if Colwell didn't start on the Friday, I imagine would be popular.
Just on West Ham, so they play on the Saturday. They do have the single game day, the opening one on game week 4 away to Luton. Will that play into your thinking at all on this day, or?
Maybe it depends how Nakamba plays. If I think he's going to if I think he's got a chance of picking up tackling bonus on the Friday night. There was a few last year. The Polinia one. Now I know that Polinia has a bigger goal threat than Nakamba, but I was so tempted on a Friday night when Forest were shipping loads of goals and Mitrovic was on fine form last season, and then he missed a penalty and Polinia got an 11-pointer on the Friday night, and I just stuck to my guns and picked Polinia there. And I'm not predicting a repeat, but yeah, Chelsea to West Ham, there would be the natural move if you really wanted Bowen as captain against Luton. The problem is I'd probably be wanting to move straight back off again because West Ham's fixtures aren't particularly great.
Yeah, you're right. It could be need to maybe one for next week's pod, but maybe there's some kind of daisy chain plan there where you kind of jump in quickly. If you're thinking of getting rid of a player already, you could go on to it. Again, we'll see how Luton play against Chelsea. Like if Chelsea go and batter Luton 4 or 5-0, for example, and West Ham play well against Brighton, which is it's going to be a tough game. But you look at Ward-Prowse, for example, 2 assists. Look at Bowen, even Antonio and stuff. There could be some options there.
So you were talking about if you had an injury, like if I had an injury, you move to Chilwell. I think I'd prefer to move to Bowen and then captain Bowen against Nakamba the following week.
Captaincy, schmaptaincy, mate. If Chilwell turns up at home to Luton and a home to Forest,
I'm not suggesting he can't haul, but I just it's not my kind of player in Sky.
No. Sunday, Sheffield United against Man City. We get to see the lineups. We get to see, everyone will be on Haaland as captain, assuming he plays. Burnley, Villa, Newcastle, Liverpool. The only probably thing of note here is this is the start of a very, very, very nice run for Man City because they play on the Sunday. There'd be a temptation to move off certain players like Rashford, like Martinez, maybe Bruno if you've got Bruno. Players of that ilk. We touched on the best assets already. I think I'm probably interested in Rodri. I think seeing from what I've seen so far, I think he's probably only one of maybe 3 who were guaranteed to play every week. Any more interested in going a bit harder?
Bernardo Silva's back in training now as well. Like if I'm not suggesting he comes straight back in, but if those that maybe think that Alvarez and Foden are sure the starts, maybe they're more 85% than 90% or what, however you want to cut it. Rodri and Diaz are the 2 that I'm interested in, and I appreciate they're the 2 of the more expensive ones. But I did well last season avoiding the City rotation, and I'll try and do the same again this year.
Cool, good stuff. Thank you, Paul. Question time. We have tried to integrate most of the questions into the content in this pod, so hopefully people noticed that. So we'll just do some kind of a couple of outline sort of questions. We, as I said, I think we've answered most of them actually, or if not all of them. One from FPL Spartans. I have a general question related to transfers in game week 4. Under what circumstances would you make transfers in game week 4 just before the international break? Is it worth kind of going a bit earlier or staying a bit later? Would you make a transfer on the Saturday or the Sunday in game week 4, thinking there's a break in between?
If it's a long-term move, like someone like Rodri or even Basuma or something like that, I could see the value in doing it. Every time I think of that situation, I think of Gabbiadini, and I think it was like people were going to captain him on the Saturday after the international break. He played on the Sunday against Spurs, I think, and he got injured, and then it was just 2 transfers to get him out, and it was kind of a waste of transfer. I know that that's an isolated case, but I wouldn't be too hot on it, knowing that there's good opportunities in game week 5 afterwards. But if it was like around the Nakamba to Basuma, which I suspect might be quite popular in game week 4, I'm not overly against that, but I don't know that I'd be messing about bringing players in on Sunday. Again, those that have done the 3-for-1 Salah position, maybe that makes sense to do that as well. They do play game week 4, I think, on the Sunday. They do it at home to Villa, so there would be maybe a couple of moves that I would consider, but nothing flashy, I think.
FF Waterfall just touches on Caicedo. Should do well at Chelsea, especially given the run. Is he someone who interests you? I'm not sure his price. I'm guessing like early 8 million, 8.1, 8.2 is he or something?
He's not had the pre-season as well, so it's not the fact that I don't think he'll be a good asset long term. It's if you're getting him in just to pick up the tackling and the passing, I don't think he's going to play 90 minutes until at least after the international break would be my guess. So potentially a conversation for later down the line in the international break. There's a good hop-on point on the Sunday. Caicedo feels like a player that you don't need to have good fixtures like as much as other players, because you're not relying on attacking returns or defensive returns.
FPL Matt, how many transfers would you be using the first 8 weeks of the season? How many do you think you'd be using the first 8 roughly, Paul?
How many will I use?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Like 6, 7. if I got through by using 6 or 7, and I felt I was set up for the next couple of weeks, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, unless we need to forget. Sorry, not forget. We need to remember that at the start of the season, there's always some structural points we've kind of maybe got wrong. Those kind of underpinning sort of players which you want to kind of address, and then by the time you do captaincies, by the time you've shifted a players round and restructured. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Interesting question around where's it gone? Was it gone? I've lost it. One of my keepers, Max, is it worth spending a transfer then this early? And if so, who would you be going for? I think there's a fair few options for keepers, I think.
I'd go Sanchez or Pope in Sky Gameweek 6. Match round 5. Like if you've got Onana, unless Onana's popular, so that's why I'm using him as an example. I've got no desire to take him out just now. If you really, really needed the money and didn't want to lose, perhaps you didn't start with like a Man United attacker and you need to free up a bit of money, then there's not even a good spot now to do the Onana to Sanchez move. That would have been on yesterday if I was doing it. So yeah, I'm not keen on doing it. I wouldn't be keen on doing any goalkeeper. In fact, I know that he's got Pickford because I've seen the chain afterwards.
Okay.
So maybe there is an argument after Saturday to be making that move. But if you can hold on, like what's Everton got? They've got home to Wolves and then away to Sheffield United, and then they play on the Saturday. I would definitely hold.
Yeah.
And would move on to Sanchez or Pope or even Flecken perhaps. Brentford, if you want to go into Turner for the Forest 2 fixtures, single game days, probably wouldn't do that myself, but there's 3 goalkeepers that play on the Sunday afternoon or so break that you can move to. I think that's what my plan would be.
Awesome, superb. Just having a look through all the questions, we've answered most of them in Sun shape. I think just a final word before we move on, just on the thing, people are panicking because they're not doing too well in their mini leagues. They haven't had the best of starts and stuff. I'd always liken the Sky Gate. Well, most fantasy games, maybe not FPL as such, but most fantasy games, especially Sky and Telegraph, to a marathon. And at the moment we're kind of jogging. We're not even half a mile into the 26-mile marathon, and some people are already sweating and busting a gut and drinking all their water. And kind of halfway through, they may seem unassailable. They may be on like mile 13 or 14. You're still on mile 6, and you think, "Oh, I got no chance of catching them." But pacing yourself, patience, discipline, knowing when the right time is to strike. Especially those who are in our WhatsApp groups. They know it. We kind of, we constantly kind of iterate and reiterate in these groups about the need for patience. You don't win anything by October. You don't win anything at Christmas. Leagues are kind of one. You can lose a mini league really, really early. You can have a bad rank really early by going off, shooting off, using 5, 6, 7, 10 transfers really, really early. But even if you have a bad start, you can recover really, really easily in Sky just by being patient and playing the right game. So the second half of the season, this is a message maybe from maybe more inexperienced sorts of players, but you won't win your mini league in the first half of the season. You'll win it in the second half, and the second half is where you get all the fixture gains. All your opponents will have 5 transfers left, or 5 or 6 left. You could probably have 20 to 25 left. The fixture manipulation, everything around that, all points to you doing well then. So, shift the players around you think you need to. If you get injuries, if they're really obvious, hop on points. Cover the key captaincies, but just don't panic and don't worry if you fall 100 points behind in your mini league. At this point, it really doesn't matter as long as you're playing well, as long as you've got a good team. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. We do it every year, and every year everyone panics and saying, "Stuff this! I'm just going for. I need to catch up." You really, really don't. It's a proper marathon.
Ian Parent and Niall Murphy always have solid finishes to the end of the season, and they are 2 transfer hoarders.
Absolutely, and even last year, I thought I had a ridiculous amount of transfers. I had 41 left at Christmas. I had 20 left when the average was like 15. No, I had about 25 left when the average was 15. And I still ended the season wishing I had more transfers. And it's just the way it is. And Ian Parron has also got a famous saying that you can never have too many transfers left at the end of the season. And it's absolutely true. And it's easy to forget it. It is easy to forget when people are running off and going 100 points clear, 150 points clear, 200 points clear. But if they're doing that, they are going to run out of puff very, very quickly, whereas you're playing the proper game. So, yeah. Anything to add there, Paul? Or?
No.
Good stuff. Okay, that is it for us for this week. Thank you so much, everyone.
I've got two stories to finish up on.
Oh, please do. Please, Paul. Yeah, blimey.
So, first one, it's the Edinburgh Festival on just now, so the Fringe Festival, so all like comedians, etc., and those looking to kind of like those famous as well as those trying to make the big break. And I was out on Friday night and was coming back on the last train on the way to Perth, which stops at Dunfermline, and on the commuter trains in Scotland, like the first class section, like it's not first class, but it's a little bit nicer, and I always try and sit in it. It's a lot more quieter. Like that train's pretty rowdy at festival time. And I was sitting in the very last seat beside the door where the and someone came up saying, "Oh, excuse me, is that a toilet in there?" And I was like, "Nah, you've went the other end of the train, mate. That's that's the driver." And the guy's like, "You won Sky last year, didn't you?"
No way.
And I was
like,
I was like, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, do you know Niall Murphy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've met Niall before, like friends with him now after having met him for the Sky game." And he's like, "Oh, I'm a friend of his. His name's Michael Rylance, so shout out to Michael. He says he listens to the pod." So
amazing.
But he finished 7th and 14th for his two teams 2 seasons ago as well. So like really good player as well. So yeah, shout out to Michael. And then the second story is so you and I did that like shoot for the Sky Sports game where they did the big novelty check and stuff, and there were some videos going around Instagram, and I'm not one for calling out anyone in comments. I just like take everything a bit banter and appreciate. I don't have a big following on Twitter, and I appreciate people aren't going to agree with you and some comments on there, but I did find it funny that the first comment that I looked at underneath my recommendations this season, so one of them was on Dunk and was like, "Oh, he's a staple for the Sky game, 8.3 million, one of the first names on my team sheet. He starts on 5 instead of 2 points, and he gets the odd clean sheet as well. You factor that in." So the guy's honed in on that comment where he gets the odd clean sheet, and he's like, "Oh, this Bro's picking Dunk because he gets the odd clean sheet. Why else would you pick him in FPL?"
Oh, no way.
Which I found pretty funny.
So it's got Sky plastered where everything. Yeah. You clearly explain it because the scorers, somebody still picked the fact FPL.
And he knows I won the game, and he's still digging me out for giving like.
What does he know? What does he know?
Bum tips.
That's fantastic, mate. And well done on getting recognised. That's I've had a couple of them. It's quite like a humbling, but quite a nice feeling sometimes, isn't it? When you know that someone is kind of watching you from their room and they dig you out and recognise you. It's really nice. Well done, mate. Good stuff. How the other half live, Paul? How the other half live?
That's it.
Okay, that is it from us for this week. As usual, thank you so much for all those watching and listening, and your continued support is much, much appreciated. Thank you so much for joining us live, and thanks to those who are going to watch it back and listen back. Thank you so much, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1 MCANULTY, and we are just about to record Nip and a Half podcast for the first one this season. So if you're a multi-fantasy format player, then give it a listen. It'll only be 15 minutes-ish, so nice and bite-sized, and it'll be on Spotify tomorrow. I noticed after Game Week 1 I was ahead of you and you didn't want to record last week, and now that you've jumped ahead of me, all of a sudden you want to record. Pretty standard McNulty there. My handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergi. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Only 31 likes, 100 people watching. Come on, just press like. Remember to subscribe to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions and leave some comments. We'll be back next week previewing Sky Game Week 4. The very best of luck tonight and in Game Week 3. And goodbye for now.